My name is Chris Adams. I'm the founder CEO of SharpRank. We are the industry's independent evaluator. That's going to be a very confusing concept for some people right now, so that's what we're going to get into. My background is in investment banking. I started my career buying and selling professional teams. I went to Big Four audit, then came back to investment banking. Left investment banking in 2018, right when sports betting was repealed at a federal level, and was driving along one day, heard a radio ad with a guy who was making claims about his ability to pick games that they were statistically impossible, and then he was guaranteeing the people money if they were to call and buy the picks. So being the curious auditor investment banker I was, who was licensed at the time, I called, and he gave me a pick, and I said to the guy sitting next to me in the car, hey, do me a favor, just call this number. And he got the other side of the bet, same person. And in that moment, it dawned on me, I would have my license stripped, and I would never be able to work in investment banking again if I were to take a public forum, lie to people about my ability, and then guarantee them money on top of that. So I said, surely, someone's overseeing this. Someone has to be. This is public influence. This was ahead of FTX, but same concept. And so what we set out to build was an independent evaluator. And what we're starting to see in sports betting, I think, is a lot of problems around consumer protection. And I think this is really important when you think about the fragmentation of the market. There is no federal oversight. Okay? It comes from a state level, but states do not have the agility to move and adapt to consumer protection initiatives the way a private entity can, and move across borders and jurisdictions with the sports books, the media properties, et cetera. So what we found, there are no guardrails in place. I had a legislator the other day ask me, well, what's so wrong with the Wild West? And I said, well, sir, it wasn't a movie. The life expectancy was like 30. There were no cures for diseases. If it was that great, it would still be the Wild West. And what we found is industry players are willing to participate, but they're not willing to participate in a fragmented market. Okay, so here is why all of that is really important. Okay. There is no separation of function in sports betting. It is a structural flaw. And what I mean by that is this mirrors the exact infrastructure of banking. In banking, you have equity research and you have trading sitting under the same house. And in the early 2000s, what was happening was the trading side was saying, hey, equity research, we just got contracted to take a company public. It would sure be nice if that valuation was super high and we can kick you back some money after the IPO. That came clanging down with compliance walls between those two functions. They cannot communicate with each other until they go through a compliance filter. Sports betting, you have a sports book, which is the trading side of the house, and you have content, which is the research side of the house. A lot of them are vertically integrated, but some of them are affiliated out. And it really doesn't matter, because even if it's not happening, the fact that it can happen, that the sports book can dictate the content that the public sees, that is a flaw that will have dire, dire consequences. We've seen it over and over again, from Enron to FTX. And unfortunately, we wait until the collapse. And so what we are proposing is a proactive solution to this. So here's what an independent evaluator is. In its simplest terms, you can think of it as a mix of audit function and ratings. So the audit function is very simple. It runs exactly like, simple. It runs exactly like a financial statement audit. We're testing for key assertions, we're testing controls, we're looking at all these different things to assign, is this a valid source of information? From that point, the ratings come out, and those look very similar to a Morningstar or any sort of third-party validator. The first thing you do when you hire somebody, you call references. The first thing you do when you look for a restaurant, you look or buy something on Amazon, you look for ratings, independent ratings. And that's what we provide in this market that currently does not exist. So here is the world in which we play. We use the term sharps. We understand that that's in the industry, that is a very defined term, but what we use it for is anyone or thing publicly facing who is making a bet that can influence the public. They fall under our purview, okay? A lot of people thought it was very funny that I put apparel on here a while ago, but now you're seeing Fanatics come in, okay? And all the ways that you can influence the public, this group of people, platforms, et cetera, are highly important to the success of the sportsbook. And there is nothing wrong with using them. Nothing. But you have to separate them. You have to make sure that the public knows that what they're getting is actual information and just not what's most advantageous to the sportsbook. What we are and what we're not, sometimes like a photo negative, it's a little easy to understand what we're not because this is a very new concept in this industry. We are not a pick tracker. That is not a business model. We are not a media outlet. We don't take bets. We're not a prediction site or anything like that. We are an independent, audit-based, algorithmic research and analysis platform, okay? And here is why this is so important to secure now. We are at two very, very big inflection points with sports betting in this country. Very, very big. One is the introduction of the casual consumer, okay? And that is getting unlocked by the use of experts. Because just like fantasy football, or fantasy sports, which was originally done on paper, and for math nerds like me, suddenly it was gamified and experts showed up. To your point, you can just follow the expert. That is what builds in the casual consumer. The other one, financial markets. Now, hang on here, because this gets a little funny, but there is current legislation in a few states that allows business entity wagering functions similar to a mutual fund, whereby funds pooled together from different investors are then used to wager on various sporting events. So this means 401k could have allocations to that. I could start a closed-end fund. There's nothing in here about a licensed person running those funds, okay? So getting out ahead of this and validating who these experts are and who they could be is going to be really, really important, or this bubble is going to implode on itself. It's very, very important for us as an industry to set some parameters and guardrails. Has to happen, absolutely. So that is a little bit about what we do. From a progress standpoint, there are 4 states right now, 2 active with active legislation that require the use of an independent evaluator. And they are moving very, very fast through state sessions. And we intend to open up a completely new market for this sports betting industry by securing the consumer protection aspect of it. So that is it. I will take some questions if anyone has any, but that's what I got.
I'd be curious to hear more about the reception of what you're talking about, both with the governments. You mentioned the regulator who wanted the Wild Wild West, but I'm sure there is sort of that dynamic between consumer protection versus more regulation, right? So on the government side, but also the sportsbook side. They should want this before an FTX type situation. So how are you, what's the landscape out there for both of those?
Yeah, great question. It is a balancing act, because when you put this in front of them, they're most sports books are fighting so many fires that they just see the word independent evaluator and they're like, no, 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 no. And we're like, no, read it, right? Like read it, because what this does for you is it squeezes out the black market. It increases your market share, because if you're walking down a row of restaurants that all have a health inspector grade in the window and one doesn't, the foot traffic into that is going to disappear. And so the ability for them to take the stance around consumer protection is something that they're really interested in doing. Obviously, regulators want, Massachusetts right here is a great example. They just opened up affiliate relationships and told the sports books, just so you know, there are some stipulations that are going to come with this. But that's existing in every single state right now, yeah.
So who are you selling into? Are you selling into the state, or how do you think about monetization?
Yeah, so we sell into operators, betting exchanges, media properties, as well as state governments. Yeah, it's kind of mix of government contracts and commercial contracts.
I'm putting my ESPN hat on now, but so you mentioned the content and the media, and that's one of your sharps. So from a sort of media platform perspective, what should an ESPN be keeping in mind?
Good question. So as ESPN continues to evolve and the questions around sports betting begin to get a little more clear around what their approach and Disney's approach in general is going to be, I think it's important to understand that a lot of people view things on ESPN or certain platforms as what's called wagertainment. Hey, it's just fun, right? To an extent. To an extent, it is fun. If I'm sitting in New Orleans watching Sunday Night Football and Drew Brees is giving out his betting prediction on NBC or whatever it is, and I would never bet, I'm actually paying attention. That's my guy, okay? And so the way for them to use those people appropriately and safely is really important from a consumer standpoint.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.